I'm Rob Skinner, and this is the Rob Skinner Podcast. Today I'm talking to 24-year-old Kenan Mitchell. Kenan went on the Chance of a Lifetime program and spent 3 months in India. He's a man of multiple talents and interests. He's a snowboarder, skydiver, skater, and musician. He paraglided in the Himalayas and is a professional level barber. He currently leads a campus ministry at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts that saw 10 people get baptized in the last 12 months. Listen as he talks about his experience with Chance of a Lifetime and how he's seen God at work in his life. All this and more on the Rob Skinner Podcast. Welcome back to the Rob Skinner Podcast. My goal is to inspire you to live a no-regrets life, make this life count, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. I had an awesome week last week. I took 2 guys that I disciple, Coleman Gordon, who leads my campus ministry here in Tucson, and Brian Mackey, who leads the church in Flagstaff, Arizona. And we went up to the Grand Canyon and hiked from the top of the South Rim down to the river, the Colorado River, camped overnight, and then returned the next day. It was awesome, and it was challenging at the same time. We were hiking down. The elevation difference from the top, it goes from about 7,000 feet of elevation at the South Rim down to the river. It's around 2,000, so it's about a 5,000-foot elevation change, and you feel it. My legs were like jello going down at the end of it. Spent the night. My legs were sore the next morning, like, oh my gosh. When you look up, it's crazy. You're like, how am I ever going to get back up to the top? And we just had a great time. We were walking along, and there was this older couple that were stopped by the side of the path. And I stopped and said, "Are you okay?" And they said, "Yeah, we're okay. We're actually, well, we're not okay. The wife had injured her knee, and they said they spent the night right there on the trail. And they were waiting for rescue. And so we kept, we couldn't really do anything for them. They said, "No, don't worry, we're going to get rescued." So we hiked up another hour, and Brian and Coleman and I, and 2 foresters were on the way down, and they were carrying crutches. And so their rescue was that they were going to have to crutch their way out to get out. I was like, oh my gosh. And I heard that there was a helicopter that had come and picked up 3 people the previous day. 1 a heart attack, 2 heat exhaustion. It was crazy. So I was so happy to get up. It took us about 6 hours to climb out 10 miles and get to the top again. My legs are still sore to this day. I mean, it was really a test and a trial, but I love things like that, especially in retrospect. You go, that was awesome. It's amazing when you look back and go, how did I make it out of there? It's amazing what your body can do. So that was great. So that was my week. It's just a great time with those guys. I just think about Jesus, getting away with his disciples, going up into the mountains. And I thought, man, you got to spend those times making memories, doing hard things. It's something that we'll take to the grave with us. It's an awesome memory. So great time. I hope you're having a great fall, and I hope you're coming to the Climb Conference. It's Thursday, November 30th through Sunday, December 3rd. It's going to be in Dallas, Texas. Sean Wooten is kicking it off Thursday night. He's going to blow it out. He's so pumped. He sent me an email, and he's just like fired up about what's happening in, I think he's in Romania now. I think he's in Sofia. I can't remember. He's somewhere over there, but he says just cranking. And so he said he's just got so much stuff to share. Kevin Miller is preaching Friday night, and he's going to do an amazing job. And, I've been sharing. Josephus was, I think, a week or 2 ago. He's in Kevin's ministry, and there's just so many good things happening in Boston right now. It's just very encouraging to see the mission-mindedness and see the fruit being born. So that's very encouraging. I'll be preaching on Saturday night, and then on Sunday morning, it's Dave Bliley and Sean Wooten. They're going to be team teaching a lesson, just sharing good news, not only to the conference, but also to the church in Dallas. And that doesn't even include all the classes throughout the day. I mean, there's going to be so many great classes from Darren Overstreet. He's going to be talking about dealing with progressive theology. Dave Pocht is going to be laying out a new program along with Joel Nagel on just equipping and strengthening small ministries. I know Jeannie Shaw is going to be teaching the women and leading a women's section. There will be a whole morning devoted to women's issues and women's classes. Jeannie, Christy Peed, and my wife Pam Skinner will be teaching that morning. Joel Nagel, of course. Joel Peed's going to be teaching during the daytime. And we're going to have table conferences, basically lunchtime, where people are going to be giving specific classes for those who are interested in specific topics. For instance, Nate Bigby's going to be teaching on tent making and developing side hustles, side businesses so that you can do the ministry part-time or support yourself in alternative ways. And so many others like that. Glenn Niergarter, who I interviewed a few episodes back, is going to be talking a little bit about administration. So there's a lot of material, a lot of help and support for people who are leading ministries, whether a church or a ministry in a larger church. And that's what it's all about. It's just preaching the word, making disciples. And so I just want to encourage you. It's not too late. We still have a month left. Go to robskinner.com and register for the conference. And if you have registered already, make sure you get your hotel room booked. It's such a great location because it's so easy to walk to so many awesome restaurants right there. So it's very close to the airport in Dallas. Dallas is a huge, huge airport hub, so it's easy to get direct flights to Dallas, and they're cheaper because there's so many flights going in and out. So let's see you climb. I want to see you there. Please register today. Go to robskinner.com, look for the Climb tab, and register if you haven't already. So I'll see you in Dallas in just about a month. Kenan, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
We're really glad to have you on. How'd you become a Christian?
So I became a Christian when I was 14 years old, on March 28th, 2013. And so I just turned 10 years old spiritually, glory to God. But, I did grow up in the New York City Church of Christ in New Jersey, and my parents, our disciples, got converted around the college age. And there's a long story, but the gist of it is the love of a brother. My blood brother, his name is Seth. We've talked about this so many times. It's such a cool God story. Like we grew up, we're brothers, kind of that somewhat natural brotherly conflict was present. But for me on my end, there would be plenty of times I would say my brother and I definitely didn't get along, that I would hate my brother. I had a lot of anger growing up for some reason. And we shared a room. And so the story that I love to tell is my brother, despite how different we were, I was more of the athlete. He was more of the musician. He struggled to do really well at things. I was kind of more of a naturally did well at most things I did. And so when he was like 13, I found out that he had 12, 13, a lot of depression, and had a really tough time wrestling with that side of his life. And at the time, because I was like a jerk to him, I was not kind. When he told me that, it totally reshaped how I treated him, and it reshaped how I saw him. And when he started studying the Bible and became a disciple, totally changed his whole attitude for me. Of like, he used to call me a spaz, and I hated it. I was like, I'd freak out, I'd hit him. But then when he became a Christian, he started to do such different things that changed my life. Like, he always would invite me to hang out with him or play basketball or football, even though he was horrible at those things. And I was great, but he just wanted to spend time with me. And I'd always say no. And then he'd invite me to hang out with his friends, and like Matt Rupert and Mark Persing, some of these guys. And I would really love those guys. So I was like, oh, but I wouldn't do it because I just didn't want to admit that I was being warned. But then the kicker of it all was, every night before we'd go to bed, he'd say, Kenan, I love you. Good night. And I never said it back. Oh, I never said it back. It was a long time of him saying these things, doing these things, that for the first time in my life, despite being a kingdom kid, I got to see how Jesus changed someone. And the more that I did, the more that I realized how empty I was inside, and I wanted to imitate him, and eventually admitted that I wanted to study the Bible. I was so embarrassed to say it to him, but studied the Bible, and then my brother baptized me, and he's been my best friend since. So God has definitely used my brother to help me become a Christian.
Wow. So how much older is he than you?
He's 2 years, 7 months, and 9 days older than I am.
Okay. And how old are you?
I'm 24.
Okay. 24. And there's so much more, according to Neil Young. That's a great, great age. That's awesome. Well, you got involved in Chance of a Lifetime, the program that I spoke with Doug Arthur about a couple times here on the program. How'd you get involved with that program?
So I got to go to college at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. And, prior to my senior year, COVID hit. And instead of going into senior year, I took a whole year off, went into the full-time ministry, stayed at UMass at the time. But then went back to school. Senior year happens, and praying about, okay, God, where are you leading me? And I'd heard about the Chance of a Lifetime program. Because that year I went into the ministry, they had started the program, and I was like, dang, like that would have been such a cooler experience to have done. But so I thought about it, and then, but right before graduating, I got a call from Kevin Miller, who leads the Boston church. And he kind of casted a vision for me and two other brothers, his brother Colliday and Sam. And he was like, I have this vision of you guys all signing up for Chance of a Lifetime together and getting to do this really cool thing and get closer with one another. I think you have a lot to learn from each other, but then to go have a great impact. And so after a lot of prayer and advice, and I had some other doors open, I just realized like the other option was staying in Pioneer Valley and working with the campus there. But I just felt like I was kind of doing a lot of things on my own. Like this would be a new chance to get involved with like 15 other 20-something-year-olds, just go have like a blast on this adventure with God. I've always dreamed about living overseas. And so the phase 3 portion would allow me to do that. So I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. Just getting to also like work at Camp Hope for Kids was a dream. I used to go there as a camper. So then to get to go be, a part of the staff was like a dream. So it was just like, yes, yes, yes. And then like get paid to do all of that. Like, okay, come on now, let's go. So that's, and then I committed and I started in May 22.
In May of 2022. Okay. So you were going to UMass Amherst, which is in Western Massachusetts. Is that where it's at?
Yeah. Western Massachusetts.
Pioneer Valley.
Yep. Pioneer Valley Church of Christ.
Okay. That's the name of the church. And then the city is Amherst, and the church's name is, Pioneer Valley. I've never even heard of that. Is that where, near Springfield or?
Yeah. So it used to be called the Springfield Church of Christ.
Okay.
And then, so now it means in Chicopee, Massachusetts, pretty close to where Springfield is. Yeah, it's not a part of the Boston Church of Christ. It's kind of its own independent church of about 200 disciples in the Springfield area.
Right, and that's where Kevin Miller and Chris Zillman went to school there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so it's got a nice legacy there. You just dropped out of school, like after your junior year? Tell me, was that because of COVID, or what prompted you to do that?
No, it is so funny. It is basically right junior year in that March time, that March, April, we're about to go on spring break. Spring break turned into forever COVID. They were going to be fully online come my senior year. And I was thinking about doing it, but then I was like finding out all the freshmen that were going to come in, all these new disciples were no longer going to come, but stay home and do remote. And I was like, what kind of senior year is that? And I remember when I was a freshman, how important the seniors were and helping me get excited about my college experience. And I was like, I'm going to have no influence on anyone if I just go and do the school. So I wasn't in a rush to graduate. I was like, I don't know, let's do something crazy. And so I prayed about going on some adventure with God. That's all I called it. And I wanted to move overseas, and I prayed about it. I had some really cool conversations with, there was an idea I might have been able to go to Paris, but then God kept closing the doors and kept opening them to just stay at UMass and just be on staff. Our campus ministers had just stepped out of the ministry, so there would have been no one leading. And so it just was like, you know what? All right, cool. Let's stay here, and I'll just lead the ministry. And I had a friend move back, who from my freshman year, she was an accountant, moved to Boston. I called her randomly and was like, just catching up with her, a great friend of mine. And she was telling me about, oh, I'm like quitting my job. I want to maybe work back in the college system. And I was just thinking, and literally that day I had got a call randomly from my old campus minister saying, hey, we're looking for a sister to co-lead with you. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm just trying to do my thing. And after that phone call with my friend, it turned into her moving back to Amherst and going to the full-time ministry with me, which was just the coolest, most exciting experience. So that's what we did that year.
That's great. What was her name?
Her name's Faith Ogbewe.
Okay, Faith Ogbewe. Way to go, Faith. Okay, so how was that year? I mean, how did it turn out?
Oh, first 6 months, first semester was awesome. It was literally a dream. We had 9 guys, 9 campus brothers living in a 2-family house together. And none of them were going to school. Like they were in classes, but all online. So we were literally in the house, but it was a disciple's home. And so we owned it. So we built a patio onto the side of the house, like a fire pit in the backyard. We'd have slip and slides in the backyard with our cars in the grass, shining lights on it, spike ball. So the first 6 months were grilling out together, just bonding, devos in the house. And so it was kind of weird being the minister in the house. That was my whole ministry basically for the guys. But then it'd be funny. I love if my guys hear this, because the second semester we all agree was terrible. It was at each other's throats. Everyone's getting mad at each other. Lot of house talks as what are we doing, you guys? Yeah, it was quite a time.
Tell me about your experience in India.
This is perhaps one of my favorite questions to be asked right now, because India was without a doubt one of the most transformational experiences I've ever had. We moved there May 20th of this year, and then we moved back to the States around August 10th or 12th. So I was there for almost 3 months. So I'll kind of split it up, and it's a lot. There's so much that I could share about India and the people. And first, kind of just what is India like? It is a crazy place. I was in Delhi. So I was in Delhi the whole time. And India is just, it was always surreal. When I'd be in India, I'd be like, I cannot believe I'm across the world in India right now. It was just a really a crazy thought. But India itself is colorful, it's vibrant, it's a lot of music, a lot of noise. There's constant honking everywhere you go. There's cows in the streets. It's amazing. It's definitely different than what I was used to. And I got to live. So the reason they brought us to India was there was a new school of mission that they were seeking to plant in Delhi. And India, the Indian churches had already had one mission school in Bangalore with about maybe 14, 15 students throughout India who had been training in the ministry. So what they did was they took all of those students and they took all of those trainers and they all moved to India and to Delhi at the same time. The Americans, the 6 of us that went to Delhi. And so all of us were transitioning at the same time. We all lived in the flats together. The girls, there was 11 of them. The guys, there was 10 of us. And it was crazy. So the girls have it a little harder than the guys. There was 3 queen beds for 11 girls.
Oh my gosh.
So they're stacking up 3 or 4 in a bed, basically. And for the guys, we had 3 bedrooms. We each had our own little mattress. That was just crazy, living together. And cooking and having different foods and sitting on the floor and just hot. And you're like, this is crazy. This is cool. And I would say it was amazing. I got taken care of in a great way by the Indian churches, or by the disciples there. So that was like what it was like kind of when I first got there, but so many incredible lessons that I've taken away, which I can share if I'm going to share some of those.
Please do.
So if I had to, people ask me about this question a lot, and they're like, if you could describe India in one word, what would you say? And the only word that I've really come to believe is as true as I can get it is the word raw. And I think it's beautifully and tragically raw. I think that when I say that, when you look up the word raw, it's about life in its true state. And coming from the U.S., there's this own way of doing things. There's this kind of bubble we have as a country, but you go around the world, and me in India, it was eye-opening to see how raw life is. You walk around, and it's a weird balance of class, where you see, you're walking down the street, and there's just you see the poverty in many ways, the physical poverty, materialistic poverty, the relational poverty you can see, which was very raw, like kids with no clothes just playing in the dirt in the street as I'm walking to the metro station. And people coming up to your car, and you get to have moments of connection, but you just see it in their eyes. You can see a level of brokenness, and a level of joy at the same time. It's a really interesting experience. And the idea of climbing the socioeconomic ladder is different. People just kind of are who they are. They're dealt their cards, and even in the disciples, they're just true to what they believe. They're raw. Like, they just love God. They're single-minded about it. And, it was really cool to see. And so that's kind of like the beauty of it, right? There's something so great about having facades stripped away of like comfort and easy lifestyle, like all that's removed. And that can be hard, but you get to experience such a true life. Like, you're sweaty, you're dirty, you smell bad, but you're like, what, this is just me. I'm just going to be me. I'm not going to fake things. Any makeup you would have put on, just comes off, it's interesting. But the tragic part, right, is that you just see such a broken world, so much hurt. And you kind of wrestle with those things in your mind at the same time. So that's kind of how I would describe it. And then some just quick lessons that I learned. I would say that the biggest lesson that I feel like God taught me there, I ended up getting sick for 20 days. It's the infamous Delhi belly. And it's a combination of, well, I don't know. I don't want to make it even squeamish, but your stomach hates everything about you when you have Delhi belly, and it makes it hard to eat. And so you start losing weight, and it's just not pleasant. Let's put it that way. So got really sick, but Dinesh and Caroline George, who are an incredible couple who've been in India for a long time, leading the way of God's kingdom, and they hosted me for like those entire 20 days and just loved me and spent time with me. We were watching TV shows together and having meals together. They're like my parents. They became my parents when I was there. Love them. And one time when I was having a quiet time, I think, like I said, this podcast is all about big living, having this adventure for God, making life count. I'm very wired that way. Like, I want those things. And if I was to tell you my ambitions in life, it's like, I want to skydive. I want to live in a foreign country. I want to, I don't know, who knows, own a business and just do crazy things for God. And I can think that way. But I had this moment while I'm doing all of it, right? I'm living overseas. I had gone paragliding in the Himalayan mountains like a couple weeks prior to that, like living this life everyone would want, right? And I had this moment where I've been studying James all summer, and it talks a lot about envy and selfish ambition. There's this one part in James chapter 3, and there's where envy and selfish ambition is where every evil practice is, basically. So I just started to kind of go down this, God led me down this mind path, reflecting on my life, reflecting on ambition and what do I want to do. And selfish ambition, I was like, dang, that's pretty simple. It's just ambition that only benefits you, right? Like and I started to realize that I do have all these big ambitions for my life, but many of the things I want to do come from a place of seeking happiness, not so much seeking to have an impact on the world or in God's kingdom. But reality only benefit me. And I think that was one of the hardest things to come to terms with. Cause I was like, even being there and helping the church, like, why am I really there? Am I there because it's satisfying some dream that I've had just to have a big life, or really to be used by God and to benefit the lives of others? And I had to wrestle with that because I think a lot of it was just because I wanted to be happy. And so in my life now, as I wrestle with having a life that counts, I have to wrestle with the motive, and India and being there really exposed it all. And so I'm figuring out, what are my ambitions that really are going to go and have a huge impact, not for me, but truly for them or for God's kingdom. And I'm working on that one. I'm figuring it out.
Okay. So you got sick for 20 days. Is that right?
20 days.
So you had a lot of time to think about that. And
yeah.
Who were some of the people that went with you on that trip?
So there was a team of 6 of us. So there's 3 guys and 3 girls. So we were all in cold together. It was Isaiah Young, a brother named Khalide Ajuape. He's actually on Revive right now with Sean Wooten in Romania. Isaiah's in the full-time ministry in Boston here with me now. So it's cool. We all kind of went into the ministry. And then 3 sisters, Alex Lalensack, who's in Boston. She's a full-time nurse helping out ministry part-time. Brielle Almonte, who went back to working full-time as a computer engineer, but serves in the ministry on her own time. And then Alexis Sanchez, who is amazing. And she moved down to Philly to work with the youth and family full-time in the ministry. So the 6 of us went together.
If someone were thinking about Chance of a Lifetime, would you recommend it?
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, it's a guaranteed growth experience. You will get closer to God as a result, 100%, because it's going to stretch you in every way imaginable. And the Bible promises that produces growth and character. So if anyone's looking for growth in character and hope, Romans 5 would teach you, go on Chance of a Lifetime.
Okay, so you finished that this August. You're in the ministry now. You're in the full-time ministry in Boston.
Yeah.
So was it just kind of a natural progression? I'm just going to go into the ministry. I mean, what led you to choose ministry?
Yeah. So yes and no. I think that there is a natural progression because phase 2 of Chance of a Lifetime is you get to be in the full-time ministry, and they place you in one of the regions in Boston. And I got placed in the southern coastal region of the Boston church for my 9 months in Boston. So when I was there was no full-time campus minister already. And so after the year, Cash McCarg, who leads that region, was, hey, we'd love to have you stay. If you want it, the job is yours. So after that conversation, that was right before leaving. That was before leaving for India. That was while I was working there. And so I had some time to pray. And in some ways, I always knew I was going to go into the full-time ministry growing up. And my parents were in the ministry at a time. My brother was in the ministry for a time. I was trained as a teenager and in college very intensely. And so in some ways it was the natural progression of things, but I had to wrestle with why am I doing this? Like, am I doing this because it's just the right thing to do? Or am I doing this because this is what I want to do? And this is where God's given me the gifts and I want to do it. And so I had to wrestle through that. And so I decided to go into the ministry just before leaving for India. And the biggest surrendering match, I would say, because it's hard. I mean, there's other things that maybe I'd want to do sometimes, like that are maybe more comfortable and more like predictable in their lifestyle, and like those are very much a temptation for me. I could want those things, and but I had that like urge, I had that thing inside of me that's some might call a calling, that little thing that's like, come on, Kenan, like you got to surrender here, like let me use you. So it was a while of me praying like to let go of the comfort lifestyle, like as much as I want to do crazy things, I really love being comfortable. It's great and easy. So I remember praying. I remember this one day right before leaving for India, where I prayed, and I just realized like, okay, God, like I'm ready. I'm ready just to surrender the comfort piece. I'm ready to surrender the predictable lifestyle piece, and I just have to let go. And I clung to Psalm 23 at the time, where it's like, it felt like the dark valley. Like I'm going to let go of all these things that give me so much value. And okay, God, like I just, where this dark valley will lead, and it promises quiet waters and the green meadows. And I got to let go of the control of my life. And I wanted God to have his victory in my life, but it was also like hard to let go. So right. prayed, eventually just let go. That brought a lot of peace. And then went to India, learned how to be an effective minister in a lot of ways, came back, and now I've been doing it for the semester started in September. So only for 2 months now, full-time.
Okay. So you're down Bridgewater State. Is that the area?
Bridgewater State University. Go Bears.
Okay. So you mentioned your parents. Your parents were in the ministry. Okay.
Yeah.
What are their names?
Dave and Margie Mitchell.
Okay, so Dave Mitchell, I've had him on the program. He's a success coach, like a leadership coach.
Yeah, he does life coaching, and yeah.
What advice was he giving you when you were wrestling with that decision?
I love my dad, because as much as he's a life coach, he tries to not life coach me unless I ask for it. I think honestly, I just felt supported. My parents both just supported either way. And I mean, it's helpful. I'm inspired by people who parents, they're not disciples, and they go into the ministry and they have to face that persecution of like, your degree, like, what are you doing? And that was very much my dad's experience with his, at least his father to a degree. I'm not sure all the details of that, but it can be harder. My parents being in the ministry, they were open to whatever I really would dream about. And they're like, just go for it. Go for what your adventure is. And they let me wrestle with God in a lot of ways to make that decision.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit, you seem like a man of many talents. I've heard you like to skate, snowboard. You've mentioned paragliding. Anything else that I'm missing?
Skydiving, surfing. No, yeah, I've always loved action sports since I was a little kid. Like just adrenaline filled things that you're like flying down on a bike and you're like, I don't know if I'm going to crash, but let's just keep going. And I don't know what it is. It just makes me feel thrilled. And I love that kind of stuff.
Well, tell me about, what's your worst injury?
What was great is I actually didn't have many injuries for the longest time until 1 year specifically. Like I started skateboarding, like my mom bought me a little skateboard. I don't remember it. So I think it was like 2 years old, something like that, like just waddling around, rolling. But I remember when I was like 13, 14, I was in 8th grade, and my coaches on my sports teams hated me because I would like do these action sports during the seasons. And they're like, but I was good enough at the sport where they were like, they couldn't tell, like they couldn't force me to quit or something anyway. But 8th grade, I remember, was my first real injury. I was snowboarding in Killington, and I loved like where the ramps and the rails are, all that terrain park stuff. And it was the last run of the day. Everyone had gone inside. My brother and I wanted to do one more run. So we go up. You never do the last run. You never go crazy. It's the rule of, but you just, and it gets icy. So anyway, all day I was hitting this one ramp, and it has like the blind landing. So I jump off, and then there's a guy sitting he must have fallen, but he's sitting right there where you would land.
Oh no.
And like everything slows down. You're like, oh no, oh no, this is not going to feel good. So I'm trying to not land on the guy. So I kind of land next to him, and I fall, and I just snap my wrist, like just broken wrist instantly. Fall again, going down the mountain on it, just weeping. And that was that ski trip. I lost. I didn't get to play the rest of that basketball season. Like my coach was not happy. And then literally, I started studying the Bible at that time. And right before Bible study, I was on my bike, and I was like trying to jump over. I stacked up those. If you're from the East Coast, you know we have so much snow here, so you have these bags of salt, or anywhere it snows that it helps the snow melt. So I piled like 5 of them on top of each other, and I was gonna jump it, and I was like, oh, let's do it. So, you know, my driveway's a circle. So I bike, I jump it, I land it, but I start turning to go down this hill, and the bike threw me off, and my handlebars, I like belly flopped onto them, and I fractured my ribs.
Oh.
And knocked the wind out of me, all this. And so that was a painful one. But that's really my only injuries, actually, after all these crazy things, just those 2.
When you mentioned the paragliding in the Himalayas, what was that? Like you got dropped out of a plane or something like that?
A little different. So when we were in India, the 6 of us who were on the Cole program, plus one of my best friends who's a disciple out there in the Delhi church named Vishal, we all went, plus Dinesh, Caroline, and their son Joshua, and we did this trip up to northern India. It's a place called Dharamshala or McLeodganj, and it's right on the left side of like the western side of the Himalayas. So I had this vision of like us all going paragliding, and I was like, I don't know if we have to get permission about this thing, but like let's do it, like let's just go. So we ended up while we were on this like little trip for a week, there was a place where we can just kind of, you know, pay to go paragliding. So you drive up early in the morning. It was like 5:30 a.m. We drive up the mountain, and it's different than skydiving because the parachute's already pulled. It's already out, and they lay it out, and then you just run off the mountain, and it catches air, and then you really just like coast around and get to take in the views. It's actually, sounds adrenaline filled, but it's very relaxing, funny enough.
So it's kind of like parachuting and like kind of like hang gliding at the same time.
Yes, that'd be a great way to put it together.
You take off like a hang glider where you have kind of a ramp and the air catches it.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to do any training for it. You just kind of step into it and just do it.
So you have you go with someone else. You have like the professional.
Oh, got it.
And you're in front of him. And then you both have to just run.
Got it.
Jump, and then you just follow along whatever he says to do.
How long was your flight?
It's like a 10-minute thing. You start it, but it was cool. It was the tallest paragliding site in all of Asia, second tallest in the world. So we're about 8,000 feet up, and you literally just run, and if you fall, it's not good. Some people fall, and then like you kind of fall off the cliff, and you don't die. Usually the wind catches you, and we get scraped up. So like that would happen. We saw someone do it, and then the guy in his limited English just goes, "Don't do that. Just run." And then it kind of lifts you off. And but it was so breathtaking. I mean, it was really cool.
Wow. Okay, so 8,000 feet or 8,000 meters?
Feet.
Okay, so that's what the elevation was. Okay. So you also are a musician. What instrument do you play?
I play the guitar.
Okay.
I do.
Are you in the worship team or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all a funny story in and of itself. How I got into that. It's a long, funny story. But yeah, my brother was a musician growing up, like I had mentioned previously, and my mom was a big musician, actress, and so I kind of rejected that side of me like for a long time, and then God kind of pushed me into helping out with the worship teams. And so freshman year of college, when I got more into playing guitar, and then I've been playing it now since freshman year of college. So
Okay, so you just picked it up in college.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And any favorite artists that you want to give a shout out to?
You know, I'm so bad with artists. People always like, you know, that song by that guy, and I'm like, you got to play it. I don't know. It's not really. I mean, my brother's in a band. Shout out the Hope So's. He creates his own. My brother's an incredible musician. He's on Spotify at the Hope So's. Hopesos. He's coming out with a new album soon, actually. So
Awesome. So you also cut hair professionally?
So, not professionally. I got into it about 3 years ago, and there's actually a cool story behind how I got into cutting hair, of all things. Do you want to hear the story?
Absolutely.
Okay. um, so 3 years ago, also during COVID, all the barbershops are closed and all that kind of stuff. And I was telling you, I was living with 9 guys in one house.
Right.
It was quite the time. But 2 years before I started cutting hair, I saw a video of barbers and hairstylists going out into the streets and spending time with people who were experiencing homelessness and getting just to not just have a momentary interaction, but get to have a rather profound moment with these people. And you get a fresh haircut, it's just, you feel good. You're like, wow,
Right.
like
Exactly.
I'm him or whatever. And I was just really inspired. And I was like, dang, I wish I could do that, because I really see in the scriptures God's heart for the poor. Like it is in his DNA. And I think we have a long way to go of continually learning how we can imitate that heart and as disciples. But so anyway, I was like, the time I was like learning how to best help people who are in those situations in the best way that I can. You want to be sensitive, because all these different, when helping hurts, there's a book about that. And I wanted to try to figure out how to do it. And so anyway, 2 years later, I was in Pioneer Valley still, I was in the ministry. And Saj and Sharma's wife, Lisa, who was leading the church, she came downstairs during a D time and it's like, hey, do you know anyone who wants this? And it was just like a cheap clipper and some scissors and some guards. And I was like, yeah, I do. I would love that. So then in COVID, I started to learn how to cut hair, like YouTube videos. And I had a great friend, Johnny, who's about to get married. And I was like, bro, like, if you let me cut your hair, I'll give you free haircuts for life, no matter how good I get. And he was like, all right, man, cool. So I started cutting his hair and then other roommates' hair. And then it like took off. Like I just kept doing it and learning. And so 3 years now, the cool part of it is like, I feel like God wants me to do this. And the short story is that legally, without a license, I don't have a barber's license. You can't charge people without a license. It's the way the law works. So I wrestle with that, because I'm like, like, does it really matter? It's like $20.
Right.
Like,
right.
But the Bible's like dishonest gain, like stay away. And so I had to wrestle with that. And there's a time I was struggling. I was like about to start charging, like whatever. And I wanted to get some cordless equipment so I could start to prayerfully go into the streets and spend some time learning how to cut hair in the streets. And I needed cordless stuff to do that anyway. So I go to a campus retreat in North Carolina, meet a guy named Lalo, who wasn't a disciple at the time and was just coming and visiting. And I met him because my friend was studying the Bible with him, and he connected us. Hey, what's up, man? Da, da, da. We go that night to a Waffle House, as we do at campus retreats, with no money and eating waffles. Sitting across from him, and somehow we're talking about barbering, and he said to me, and I'm telling him about, I'm trying to get this equipment, but it's expensive and I can't get paid, da, da, da. And he's like, oh, how much does something like that cost? And I was like, oh, it's like $150 for what I'm trying to get. And he was like, so if someone gave you $150, like right now, would you buy it? And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean? He's like, no, I'm serious. Like, if someone gave you $150 right now, would you buy that clipper? I was like, yeah, of course. And he's like, okay, great. And he hands me his phone and he says, I'm going to buy it for you. And I was like, what? And then not only that, so I ended up buying this thing, right? So I'd have to pay for it. God totally blessed that in a crazy way. But then I had surrendered the whole idea of charging, like, okay, God, whatever. And then this was after the stimulus checks had hit. So I had gotten that stuff, but I get another random check from the government for $500 about 2 weeks after I get back from that retreat, which to me was God saying, Kenan, like, I want you to do this, but you have to trust me. Like, I'm going to bless it. So it was crazy. And so to this day, I'm like so close to starting to go work in the streets. I kind of got a little caught up with trying to get perfect haircuts that I lost the vision for a little bit. So now I'm almost there, and prayerfully, come this fall, this spring, I really want to start that, but I can be a little scared. So I'm like, all right, God, in faith, let's do this thing.
What would it take for you to become a professional, to get your license?
So, so you go to barber school, and it's about between $12,000 to $15,000 to go. And you got to get your license is like a training. I think it's like 1,000 hours or something like that. And being that I'm not really in it for the money right now, to spend that much money just to have a piece of paper isn't worth it.
Got it.
So I'm not spending that much. I don't know if I ever make that much back if I did it. So
right. So this is just your act of service.
Yeah.
Got it. Well, let me ask you this question. What's the most inspiring spiritual experience you've had?
So it's such a great question.
Well, let me break it down a little bit more. Like, what insight has really inspired you? When you just think about your relationship with God on an internal level, what's really impacted you where you go, man, that insight, that, view into God's word, or just a thought that came to your mind, it really impacted me. And secondly, how have you seen God work in people's lives that you've touched?
Yeah. I mean, I can be fully honest about that first question. It's so recent. It's like 17 days ago, recent. And we had the campus retreat in New England this weekend, just now, and I got to teach a little class on it. And I'm learning a lot about what Jesus meant when he said to Paul in 2 Corinthians 12, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. In a lot of ways, and even like some of these things we've talked about already, a lot of my life can come across like the poster child, kingdom kid, strong disciple, ambitious guy. And with that, I've always struggled with being vulnerable. I've always struggled with understanding my emotions. Easy to ride the joys of the faith, but not go deep enough to really know I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling frustrated. And Paul in that scripture goes talking about like this like super apostle thing, and like all these apostles are being held up for what they do. And Paul's like, I'm going to be a fool for a second and tell you all of the things that I've done just to validate. He's like, I hate doing this, but like, let me tell you. He's like flogged and shipwrecked and Hebrew of Hebrews and all this stuff. But then he goes to that next part where he says, all that's useless. And Jesus gave me a thorn in my flesh. And Jesus tells him, my grace is enough for you. My power is in your weakness. And growing up in the church, I can be such a slave to doing everything just right. Like, do it all right. Study the Bible right. Rely on your training, be strong. But that weakness part is weird. It's like, I don't get it. And so I feel like God has been just totally blowing my mind with learning what does it mean to be poor in spirit, as he teaches in Matthew 5. And when you look at the examples in the scriptures, like the sinful woman who goes to the Pharisee's house and is weeping and washing Jesus's feet with her tears and her hair and perfume. And I'm learning that being poor in spirit is to be desperate for God, and to see that you can't earn God, no matter how talented you think you are. Like there is an ocean that separates you from him.
Mm.
And I just feel like I'm in a season of life where I've done everything right for so long, and I still feel so distant from God. I still feel so tired because I'm working so hard, and I'm learning the beauty and the power that, like, recently there's this one time where I'm learning to be more real, more vulnerable, like that woman was with Jesus. Just come in to the relationship instead of being all strong and sculpted and perfect. Like, no, I actually feel inadequate. I actually feel pretty lonely. I feel, and recently, the time I just kind of felt this thing in me for a while where I know I have the Holy Spirit, but I almost feel like I don't. Like I'm praying these things and I don't feel like God is working in ways that I would imagine if I had the Holy Spirit in me, it would be crazy. You would see like this crazy thing. And I tried being vulnerable. Okay. I tried being poor in spirit, and I went to this park and I was praying. I was like, God, like, I just feel, I didn't know the words at the time, but I was feeling so, those words, like inadequate with him. And I felt lonely. I felt like, because I feel like I don't have the spirit. I feel like you're not with me. I feel like you're not really right here with me. And I was really sad. And I just told God, if you hear me now, like send a bluebird to come land on this bench right next to me. And I'd love to tell you, Rob, that it happened, but it didn't happen. And I was like, oh, and I call my dad, and I'm frustrated. And I have a Bible study. So I just go on with my life, and I have a D time, and I go to this ice cream place. This is a crazy story. I go to this ice cream place, and it's me and my D group, and then one woman with her couple daughters, who one works there. And all I said to her was, "Are you in line?" And she's like, "Nope, not in line." So I go just order my chocolate chip ice cream, and we go sit down on this bench kind of over to the left. And this woman that was behind me walks over, and she comes over to me and she's like, "Hey, excuse me, can I talk to you for a second?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, what's up?" And she said, "I just wanted to come over here to tell you that I can feel the presence of Jesus in you, and I can tell you have the Holy Spirit."
What?
That was my reaction. I was like, stop. Like, did you just really say that? And I don't know all of how this works yet, honestly, but in my weakest day, where I finally got real and desperate for God to move, he moved. In a crazy way that I can't justify. Even if he sent the bluebird, I could have just thought, all right, whatever, this bluebird wanted to sit here. But God, in his own way, knew how skeptical I was, and was like, I'm going to do it in a way that he could never justify by another means. I didn't tell her about God, or I wasn't sharing my faith or anything. So spiritual experience wise, I'm a minister, I'm all these things. I'm learning that, again, it's just not about me. It is God, it is his spirit, and I need to learn how to be desperate for him to move in the ways he wants to, and surrender to that will, vulnerable.
Right.
And yeah, I'm not great at it yet, but I'm feeling so much more like God is with me, so much more valued by God. And I just stopped trying to be perfect. And I'm like, man, this is how I'm at. This is where I'm feeling. And it's cool to see. I feel so much closer to God than I've ever felt in this place. So that was pretty crazy. That was literally like 2 weeks ago.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Tell me a little bit about what you've seen, how you've seen God work in your ministry, people's lives changing, anything encouraging.
Yeah. So, every ministry prior to Chance of a Lifetime I've been a part of has shrunk. That's not the encouraging part. Every single one. And that does something to you. You know, that it's made me feel like, what's the point?
Right.
Right. Like, and it's not that I'm not working hard. It's not that I'm not trying to share my faith. And but it's made it hard to even rejoice when people do become Christians, because you're like, all right, you'll be here for a year, maybe you'll be here for 2 years. But I've grown so cynical and faithless that people stay around. I have a lot of friends, people I studied the Bible with, not make it. You know, like anyone who's listening to this, I'm sure they can relate to that feeling of like, this just, what's the point? Like you pour your heart out and it just gets crushed time and time again.
Right.
And I remember times feeling like, God, I remember praying to God, like, I just feel like Satan's winning. Like you say you won the battle, but like 5 brothers left that semester. Like no one was making it in the Bible studies. Like, how is this? The harvest is plentiful and the workers are few, you know, like how is this the promise? And if someone's listening to this and they're there, I've been there. And the encouraging news, the other side, what has God done? I feel like it's sometimes in campus ministry or in a church, you know, 10 is like a great number. Like, man, if I could see 10 people become Christians, I don't know why we gravitate towards that, but you know, last year when I was on Cole, I don't know. I don't feel like we did anything different. I feel like, I mean, there was a faith, there was like a vision. I think Boston, the church in Boston has been so great about that, and in a healthy way, right? Having some goals and not being afraid of that. But also like totally, God's going to do what he's going to do, but let's have some great faith. And you know, and the combination of things like that year while I was in Boston, that December, that first fall semester, I was studying the Bible with a lot of guys, and like 5 of them got to baptism and didn't make it. So but there was like 2 sisters right in December who you know, made Jesus Lord, and it was super encouraging. But it was like, dang it, like this is just hard. And then between that semester and May, we had received 2 students who transferred into my school who had just become disciples. And then for that year, 10 disciples got baptized.
Wow. That's awesome.
And there was a guy who was one of those 5 who said, no, I don't want this, who ended up coming back to the fall retreat the next year, saw a couple of people get baptized, and was like, I want this.
Wow.
So he studies the Bible, we finish, he gets baptized. I find a wallet on the floor randomly, call the guy in the wallet. He comes, he's on the football team at BSU. He studies the Bible. He becomes a Christian. I listened to his sermon going into his campus, and I feel just super challenged just about discipleship. I'm walking on, there's this guy behind me, this just like good looking like dude who's just like got it all together. And I just felt like I need to share my faith with this guy. So I turn around. It's like that awkward, like you're in front of him on the sidewalk, so you have to like literally turn around and like confront him. And he studies the Bible, becomes a Christian. There's this girl, Celine, who studied the Bible all the way through. She's amazing. She's most faithful, but she kind of got caught up with some sin. She's like, she'll tell the world about what she's done in her past. And she got caught up in some sin. She was dating this guy. And so she didn't end up getting baptized when she was going to. Like that day got canceled because she got caught up in some stuff. But then she turns around, studies the Bible. Her boyfriend turns around, studies the Bible. Both of them become Christians. They're dating again. They're both like serving like crazy in the ministry, like telling everyone and their mom about God and what he's done in their lives. And then like all these young Christians are bringing out their friends. Their friends are becoming Christians. And honestly, it was just like, it wasn't that we did anything different. It wasn't that we just kept praying and trusting in God. And so 10 faithful young students became disciples, and God just totally blessed it. And so now our ministry, we've got like 19 disciples, and 10 of them are under 10 or 11 or 12 are under 1 year old spiritually.
That's awesome.
And it's just an awesome group that God is building in Bridgewater now. So it's so
must be so encouraging.
It really was. It was really, really encouraging.
What are your dreams for the future? I mean, what's your plan to make this life count?
That is very much a question, right? I'm 24. I'm figuring it out. I will say that I'm a huge fan of what life coaching is. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about what, like, is it therapy? Is it just advisors? Is it discipling? And I'm not going to get into all of what it is, but I'm really excited about, I'm going to start, God willing, a coaching relationship with Jeannie Shaw coming up. She's teaching one of my classes in my School of Missions program I'm in right now. And I think to get where, like, to have these new ambitions, like I was talking about, I'm like learning to develop these new ambitions, like even in the ministry, like getting to a place where I know that I'm doing these things to build God's kingdom and not just to satisfy something in me. Right. So as I work through some of these things, I'm using coaching as a means to kind of be able to build a vision. So hopefully in these next few weeks, or maybe this year, right? Hopefully this year is a big year where I can kind of cast some of that vision, get some help thinking through, what do I want to do? Where do I want to have impact? Where, maybe in the ministry, how is God going to do that? Is there other areas too? Like, and so in some ways, I think the coaching is really going to help me kind of figure out some of this stuff. I've prayed to get married, throwing it out there, just to have a faithful partner to do life with. I think that's definitely a dream for the future. And, I can be such a task-driven guy. And so to get help with like the relational side, I think would be so helpful. And so that's something, and like a weird dream I have, I don't know about weird, but I really would love to be a pilot one day, like not as like a profession, but as like a side thing. And I don't even know why I have that. I mean, I did have 4 pilots in my family, my grandfather, my aunt, my dad's cousin, and someone else that I don't remember now. But so I don't know. Some part of me wants to do that, and I don't know how God's going to use that. I don't know where the barbering thing is going to go, if God really is going to keep blessing that. So I wish I could give you, like, I'm not much of a 5-year plan guy. I could use help with 5 years. Some of the other podcasts, I hear these guys like 10 years, we're going to do this, and here's our numbers. I'm like, I can be a big dreamer, but I need help with all right, how are we going to break that down?
Right.
So, but I want to be a faithful disciple till I die and help as many people as I can. That's my goal.
That's awesome. Well, Kenan, thank you so much for your time. All the best to you there in Boston and in your future. And we'll definitely be praying for you.
Thank you so much, Rob. Thanks for casting vision in the kingdom of God. That's super inspiring.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for listening. Here's how you can help support the program. First, hit the subscribe button and send a link to your friends. Let people know about it. Secondly, read and review one of my books, either How to Plant and Grow a Church or Courage, How to Make This Life Count. You can find those on Amazon.com. Finally, support the Rob Skinner podcast with a gift. The link is in the show notes. It's really easy to give, because my goal is to inspire you to make this life count, live a no regrets life, and multiply disciples, leaders, and churches. Have a great day and make this life count.